Marcy, Skylight, Gray, Cliff, and Redfield done. Now the long walk back to the lodge. 3:55 a.m., just signed in. Santanoni Range, let's go. The wind is whipping here in the Seward Range today. Just finished the Macomb slide and my legs are on fire. Well, I fell victim to the floating logs again. Made it to the top of East Dix. Peak number 3 of 5 for today here in the Dix Range. Avalanche Pass. On top of Rocky Peak Ridge. It's like a hurricane up here. Rain and wind here on Tabletop. Whiteface, number 6. Muddy day here on Street and Nye for number 7 and 8. Sunny and blue on Haystack. Algonquin, up in the clouds, number 18. Gothics, number 22. Panther, number 38. Allen, number 45. 7:12 a.m. Big Slide, Adirondack, 46er. You're listening to the 46 of 46 podcast. July 8th, 2018. The Dix Range. Macomb, South Dix, Grace Peak, Huff, and Dix. My first big hike and in a wilderness notorious for lost hikers needing to be rescued. I told Josh, let's do a big hike this weekend, and the Dix Range immediately came to his mind. 5 high peaks in one day, over 20 miles of hiking, and over 5,000 feet of elevation gain. I wanted a big hike, and I got one. So we set out early from Saranac Lake at 3:30 a.m. and drove to Newcomb to the Elk Lake Trailhead, where we got the only remaining parking space at the trailhead. When this tiny lot is full, the only other parking is a quick 3 miles down the dirt road, which you'll then walk said dirt road back to the trailhead, only adding 6 miles round trip of road hiking on an already 20-plus mile day. So who wouldn't want that, right? Needless to say, I was beyond thrilled that there was one spot left for us. It was a beautiful sunny day in the Adirondacks, blue skies, no wind, low 70s, a classic Adirondack summer day. So after the hour-and-a-half drive to the trailhead, we gathered our gear and signed in at 5 a.m. We didn't need our headlamps for once, and it actually felt strange starting a hike after the sun had started to rise. I knew we should have left at 3 a.m. instead of 3:30. So our plan for the day was to hike in via the Hunters Pass Trail and take the right onto the Slide Brook Trail to summit Macomb, then South Dix, over to Grace, formerly known as East Dix, back to South Dix, and then over to Huff, and finally end on Dix, and then we'll take the Beckhorn Trail down Dix, back to the Hunters Pass Trail, and back to our car. That's the loop we have planned for the day. So we began our hike in on the Hunters Pass Trail, which is a flat woods trail for a couple of miles until you come to some campsites and a cairn marking the beginning of the Slide Brook Trail. It's a little awkward because the campsites are literally on the trail, so you end up walking through the middle of people's campsites. There are many campers still sleeping, so we quickly and quietly walked through to the cairn and began the hike up without waking anybody up. In this part of the trail, up Macomb, is a nice gradual elevation gain on a windy trail in the woods. Very easy to follow, and Josh had me lead today because I needed to get the experience leading and navigating. The Slide Brook Trail is about 1.5 miles to the summit of Macomb, but not before an epic and infamous Macomb slide. Once the trail takes you out to the slide, it's a really cool and very unique Adirondack experience. The slide is the real deal. A lot of loose rocks, so this needs to be taken with extreme caution because one can get really hurt and easily killed on this slide with the wrong step. With that in mind, it's a very fun stretch of trail and a real calf and quad burner. Josh moved much quicker up the slide than I did. We both went across the slide and kind of hugged the right side as we went up, which seemed to be a good option. We met one other solo hiker while on the slide from Massachusetts. Real nice guy. He went up ahead of us and we wouldn't see him again for the rest of the day. What I found challenging about the slide is since you always see your destination every step, it feels like it just takes forever to make any progress. As opposed to being in the woods and you don't really see much further ahead of you than, a few steps. Then once you finally get to the point you've been eyeballing, you turn the corner and you're still not there. Wah, wah. Good times, but a real fun stretch of trail. I really enjoyed it. I do highly recommend going up this and not down, as I feel the risk of danger going down is significantly greater. People do it, but in my opinion, the best option is to go up the Macomb slide. It took us 35 minutes to climb the slide and then another 15 minutes to get from the top of the slide to the summit, which we reached at 7 a.m., tallying in at exactly 2 hours from sign-in to Summit Macomb, which has an elevation of 4,405 feet. There's a wooden summit sign and a nice lookout seeing the Great Range and the other peaks in the Dix Range. Each summit lets you see where you've been and where you'll be going throughout the day, so I found that very enjoyable. They all have similar views, but also slightly different views, as you would imagine. We both threw down a quick PB&J and continued on our way since this was only the beginning of the long day. We're now on the Dix Range Trail heading to South Dix, also known as Carson Peak, after Russell Carson, a former president of the Adirondack Mountain Club. This part of the trail was quick as it's only half a mile or so between Macomb and South Dix and took us around 30 minutes, maybe even less. Before the summit of South Dix, you'll come to the trail split that will eventually take over to Huff. There aren't signs or anything, so it's crucial, especially on this range, to know the map. Know your route, know what turns you're taking and when. And it's no wonder so many people get lost and turned around on this range. Very easy to have that happen. The summit of South Dix stands at 4,060 feet and is marked by a tree with an X and an S Dix carved into it. It's just past the Huff Trail split and has another rock lookout. Another great view today, which makes the Dix Range one of the best in the Adirondacks because every mountain has a great view. Again, we didn't stay too long, just 5 minutes or so to take it all in, and then we continued on the trail. We went past the S Dix tree to the East Dix Trail, now known as Grace Peak Trail. East Dix was renamed Grace Peak in 2014 after the infamous Grace Hudowalski, 46er number 9, who in 1937 became the first female 46er. Man, 46er number 9. There's over 11,000 finishers now, in case you weren't aware. Incredible. I highly recommend looking up Grace Hudowalski. The trail to Grace is an out and back from South Dix, so after getting there, we'll be coming right back. And this portion of the hike also took us roughly 30 minutes to summit and is less than a mile. The trails are narrow throughout the Dix Range, but they're pretty evident in my opinion and pretty easy to follow, assuming you studied your map and you know which trail to follow. It's kind of the most important part. With this said, we eventually came to the summit of Grace, which has a really cool cliff and fantastic open rocky views, standing at 4,012 feet. No summit sign or marker, but you can tell when you're there. It's a great open rocky summit, great place to spend time on and have a sandwich. Since we had to get back to South Dix to then go to Huff, we only stayed a few minutes again before we started making our way back, and then we noticed, wait, I don't remember seeing this big boulder when we came out of the woods. Wait, I don't remember this either. Josh and I both, in an eager moment of summiting, forgot to take notes of where we came out of the woods. So we got onto the rocky trail and we didn't know where we came out. After 5 minutes of looking around, Josh eventually found the trail we came out, and then it all came back to us. Ah, yes, that's right. I remember this. I remember that. So a good lesson to be learned here is don't get too eager when summiting to forget to take notes of where you came out of the woods, where the trail is, where you'll need to go back to. We definitely got a little too eager. Fortunately, it worked out okay, though. We hurried back to South Dix. We passed the S Dix X tree again, and now we got back on the Dix Range Trail to Huff that we had passed a couple hours prior. The cold between South Dix and Huff is pretty cool, and the ascent up Huff has some steeper, more rugged sections to it. There's even a cool mini rock climb for a short section that was pretty enjoyable. This portion of the hike took some time as it was not as quick as the herd paths between the other mountains were today. We eventually made it up to Huff, which has a wooden summit with a rocky lookout marked by a yellow trail marker that says Huff. Looks like it's written in Sharpie. You'll see it. It's up on a tree. Huff stands at 4,400 feet, and it's here where you really get a good glimpse of the Beckhorn on Dix and where you're about to climb to next. Up until this point in the day, we had passed just our Massachusetts friend going up Macomb and then one trail runner who passed us on our way over to Huff. So far, no other people, just those two. Knowing Dix was our final destination to hang out, we probably stayed the shortest amount of time today on Huff and continued on the Dix Range Trail herd path towards Dix. And when Josh and I hike, we both struggle to relax because there's still work to be done in our minds. So we basically summit, eat a quick snack, and keep going and repeat until we're back at the car. So we're always moving, so again, we didn't stay long. The trip between these two mountains was tough and one of the harder parts of the day physically. Going up and over the Beckhorn to the true summit of Dix wasn't going to be easy, and nor should it have been. There are two humps you have to hike over, so after getting to the Huff Col and you start ascending, you go up and over the first hump, then up and over the second hump before the final climb over the Beckhorn. And at this point, Josh and I had been moving pretty nonstop for a good 7 hours or so, I'd say. And while climbing up a steep section, I climbed up onto a rock, and due to being fatigued and, my backpack throwing my balance off and pulling me backwards, I took a big tumble backwards and had to jump off the rock ledge that I was climbing up because I lost my balance. It was a good-sized fall, but I landed on my feet first. It was about a 5-foot drop. Could have been much worse, but thankfully I didn't twist or break an ankle or worse on that fall. At 245 pounds, I would have made it very difficult for Josh to carry me out, though he would likely have just left me for dead. Every man for himself at that point, so I respect him for that. But it was at this point where I knew, okay, we need to stop. We need to take a good 20 to 30-minute break when we get to Dix. I'm tired, which Josh was fully on board with. As we got to the Beckhorn and started our final push to Dix, we began to see these little red circles on the trees. What are these little discs I'm not familiar with here in the Dix Range? Trail markers! The Dix Trail is a DEC maintained trail, so once at the Beckhorn, which is the trail we'll take down Dix, you're now on a marked trail. Hence the trail markers. We quickly made it to the summit of Dix, the 6th highest peak in New York State at 4,857 feet. Can you believe it? I did it. The Dix Range in a day. My first big hike, and I made it to all 5 summits for summits number 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. We're into the teens now on my journey to 46. So we decide, okay, now's the time to relax. And in Josh fashion, he kicked off his boots and socks, as did I, and we ate some sandwiches, enjoyed the beautiful open Dix summit, which is marked by a canister, and we drank it all in. A perfect Adirondack summer day in the Dix Range. We did it. The day is basically over, right? Right? Wrong. Little did I know about the absolute brutal foot pain I was going to experience on the descent down. I mentioned in the chapter on Phelps and tabletop how my feet were killing me after Phelps because I had taken my boots off for about 10 minutes and my feet swelled up at the summit. Well, after a good 25-30 minutes of no boots on, my feet swelled up big time, and upon putting them back on with a fresh pair of darn tough socks, wow, were these boots just so snug. So snug. We decided it was time to begin the descent down the Beckhorn Trail, which we had passed just before we summited Dix. Josh had warned me throughout the day just how steep this almost 2-mile trip down Dix is, and man, was he right. This trail is by far the steepest and longest trail of straight down of anything I've experienced in the Adirondacks. It's comically steep, and when dealing with trails that steep and technical, it doesn't make the mileage pass very quickly. And about 15 minutes into the trip down this mountain, slowly moving down, I started to have that same bottom of my foot pain I had on Phelps. Man, I feel every freaking rock and root in the center of my foot, and it's like I'm being stabbed every time. Just awful. As each step in each section went, it got worse and worse and worse. I haven't experienced such foot discomfort in my entire life, and thankfully wouldn't again, because it was on this trail where the light bulb finally went off in my head. Of course your feet hurt, you idiot. They're swollen as hell because you took your boots off for a half hour. Then you put them back on to keep hiking. Man, would I never make this mistake again. Towards the bottom, maybe 3/4 of the way down Dix, we came across an older gentleman and his probably 30-year-old son and their dog, and of course they asked, how much further? And man, like my group of female friends from Whiteface a week prior, they weren't even close. And it's not like they weren't close. They weren't even near the steep section of trail yet that's a good mile plus of just pure relentless climbing. Therefore, they weren't even close to being able to think that they're maybe close to almost being close. And today we did destroy the man's soul, however, by telling him the climb that lays ahead. I did not envy them at this point in the day. Make no mistake, people, the Beckhorn Trail up Dix is steep as hell, and it is no joke, going up or down. Going up, you need to be in very good cardiovascular shape, especially after the 4.5-mile hike in just to get to that trail. Then there's the climb, which is about 2 miles of nonstop up. Very steep up, might I add. No switchbacks or anything like that. Let me just say, I also have come to find that a pet peeve of mine is people asking how much further. You're not there yet. Just keep going. Nobody coming down has a real good estimate of how much further for you because no one's been taking notes and no one has a real time frame, or they're never going to get an accurate statement of whatever it is. It's just arbitrary anyways. How much further? Not that far, or maybe 10 or 15 minutes or so. You don't really know. Just say it. You don't really know. So just keep hiking, one foot in front of the other, and you'll be there eventually. Just a pet peeve that I've developed and something I've never asked another hiker myself. Shortly after the interaction with our two friends and their canine companion, as every swear word in the book going through my head with every step I took as my throbbing feet were getting worse and worse, we finally made it off Dix. And we came to the Hunter's Pass Trail with a sign informing me my car was only a mere 4.3 miles away. 4.3 miles. Kill me. Just kill me now. Kill me. I can't make it. I'm done. So I took out my giant knife and I begged Josh to cut my feet off. I was going to live here on the Hunter's Pass Trail with no feet. This is my new home. Just a peg-leg guy in the woods. I live here now. 4.3 miles at that point was absolutely atrociously brutal. So we kept walking slowly and surely, and wouldn't you know, we eventually came to the campsites from this morning where the Slide Brook Trail starts. And I knew from that point it was 2 miles and about 45 minutes to the car, which gave me a little pep in my step, I must say. We both started walking quick.